Okay, my favourite part of algebra is factorising. Now, factorising is, I would say, the most important part of algebra. It's probably the first creative part of algebra that you'll come across, and it's problem solving. It's trying to, it's just such an important part. It makes algebra, it simplifies things. It makes things understandable. It gives you solutions. It's just it's just so necessary, and it makes maths beautiful. So I'll stop going on about it and I'll explain what it is. Okay, so up until now you did some sort of expansion of brackets, okay, and you went 3 times x is 3x, and you went 3 times positive 2 is positive 6. Okay, so go from here to here, we call that expanding. Okay, but what is even better than this, we need to know how to do both directions. Okay, so if we go from this and we end up with something like this, we call that factorising. And so it's the exact opposite of expanding. Now, why is it called factorising? It's because we're putting, if we start with 3x plus 6, at the moment that is not factorised. Okay, it's not factorised. Remember what factors are? Factors are things that are times by each other. Okay, times by something, times by something. That's factorisation. At the moment, this is 3 times x, but then plus 6. So there's this plus 6 here tells us we've got a term here plus another term. There's no something times something times something. Okay, but if we write that as 3 bracket x plus 2, what that means is it means 3 times x plus 2, and so we've broken it up into pieces. We've broken it up into a factor here. We've got a factor of 3, and we've got a factor of x plus 2, and these things are multiplied by each other. Hopefully you can see how that is different to this, where you've got two things added to each other. So this is in factored form or factorized form. Okay, and it's really important to understand what this is and how to get to it. Okay, so before we start trying to do proper factorizations, let's just look at and just remind ourselves what the highest common factor means. Okay, so the highest common factor is the biggest number and pronumerals that go into both, into all terms. Okay, I might say it like that. It's the biggest number and pronumerals that go into all terms. Okay, so what we should just do is look at some examples. Okay, so let's look at 15ab squared, and let's just say 10ab. Okay, so let's have a think what our factors are here. Let's write each of these in a factored form. Okay, so we could write 15. I can see 15 and 10. 5 are factors that go into both of those. So I can write this as 5 times 3 times A times B times B, if I write that in expanded form. Okay, over here I can write that as 5 times 2 times A times B. Now, what is our highest common factor? Let's have a look at the biggest number and pronumeral that go into all terms. So what is the biggest number that goes into both of these? Well, we've got our 5 there and our 5 there. So our highest common factor will have a 5 in it. Okay, excellent. What about our pronumerals? Let's have a look at A. Is A in both of these? Yes, it is. There's an A there and there's an A there. Okay, so A will go into both of these two terms. How about B's? We've got B times B here, and we've got just an ordinary B here. So B will go into both of these two terms here. Okay, and so what ends up happening with the pronumerals is that you always take, so if you've got, let's say, B squared over here and B5, you take the lowest power. You take the lowest power. So in here we've got A to the power 1, there we've got B, well, let's just look up here, we've got A to the 1, we've got a1, so you just take your lowest power as your highest common factor, which is a. Here you've got b squared, here you've got b, so you just take your lowest power, b1, which is in common. I'll do another example of that to try to explain that a little bit better, because that was a bit rough as guts. Okay. Example, find the highest common factor of 21xy cubed and let's just say 14xy squared. Okay, so firstly look at the number. What's a number that goes into 21 and it goes into 14? Well, 7 will go into both of those two numbers, so that's good. How about letters? Look at your x's. Well, there's an x to the power 1 there and there's an x to the power 1 there, so take your lowest power that's in common, which is just power 1, because both of them have x to the power 1. And also we've got y cubed here, y squared there, so take the lowest of those two powers, which would be y squared, like that. And that's your highest common factor there. Just do one more. Highest common factor of 30xy cubed z squared and 2, just do negative 2 x7 y7 z9. Okay, what's the highest common factor? Alright, so let's look at the numbers first. 30 and negative 2. What's the number that goes into both of those? Well, 2. 2 goes into both of those. That's 15 times 2, and it's just 2. And there's no bigger number that goes into both. Let's look at the x's. There's x to the power 1 there and x to the power 7. What's the lowest power that goes to both of those? Well, it would be x to the power 1, or just x. Then we've got a y cubed. We've got a y cubed here and a y to the power 7, so take your lowest power that goes into both, which is y cubed, and then a z squared and a z9, so your lowest power there is z squared. And so that is your highest common factor that goes into both of those. Okay, now that we've done that, let's do some actual factorization. Okay, so an example of this would be 7x plus 21. A really simple example to start off with. Okay, so firstly we want to find out what is our highest common factor. Well, look at the two terms and figure out what is the number common factor between these two. So the highest, I'll just write it down here. Highest common factor is, what's the highest common factor between 7 and 21? Well, 7 will go into both of those. And here we've got x, and there we've got no x. So because there's no x there, there can't be any x in the highest common factor. So the highest common factor is just 7. Because no x's go into this 21 term here. It's just no numbers. So what we need to do is put 7, and we put that outside of our bracket. Okay. In fact, I'll take it even slower. Okay. What I'm going to do is write that as 7 times something plus 7 times something. And we just have to figure out what these two somethings are, and then we can move forward. Okay, so let's figure this out. 7 times what is equal to 7x? 7 times what? 7 times x is equal to 7x. Okay, so that's that first part. What's the second part? 7 times something is equal to 21. 7 times 3 is equal to 21. Okay, and so what happens now is we take that common factor out the front of the bracket, and because it's both, we got 7 times x, we just write down here x, and we write down our second number. This is 3, or positive 3, and so that is factorized. And if you expanded that out, you can check that this is correct. If you expanded that out, you get 7 times x, which is 7x, and then you get 7 times positive 3, which is positive 21. So that all checks out. Another example, let's do factorize 20x minus 15. Now let's just, I'll do squared minus 15x, something that's a bit more interesting, I think. Okay, let's think about the highest common factor. Highest common factor, do the numbers first. What's the biggest number that goes into both 20 and 15? That's going to be 5. 5 goes into both of those. There's nothing bigger than that. What goes into both x squared and x? Well, that's x to the power 1, so the highest power that goes into both is 5x. Right. Time for the truth. Here we go. So now we write down our highest common factor times by something plus our highest common factor times by something else. And let's figure out what those somethings are. Okay, 5x times something is equal to 20x squared. So 5 times something to be equal to 20 must be 4. We need to multiply it by 4 to get to 20. And also we need x times something to be x squared, which means x times x. So we need to times 5x by 4x. Let's just check this. 5x times 4x is 5 times 4, which is 20. X times x is x squared. So this is correct. Okay, fantastic. Over here, 5x times what is equal to negative 15x. Okay, so 5 times something is equal to negative 15, so it must be a negative here to get a negative 15 answer. And we want to multiply it by 3 because that 5 will get 5 times negative 3 is negative 15. Also, x times something is equal to x. It's actually just going to be negative 3. We don't need to multiply it by any x's because we've only got one x in both here. Okay, so then we take the highest common factor out the front of the brackets, and we in the inside we write what was left over. So we've got 4x there, and here we've got negative 3, so minus 3, and that is your answer. Again, you can check this. Always check your factorizations. 5x times 4x is 20x squared. 5x times negative 3 is negative 15x, so that is correct. And so that's how we do factorization. Let's just do another sort of a beast, and I might just do this quickly without sort of writing it out in full. Okay, so let's just do one more example. These just take practice. So 6a squared b plus 9ab squared. Okay, let's factorize this. Write down your highest common factor. What's it going to be? What goes into 6 and into 9? It's going to be 3. A's, we've got an a squared over here and a over here, so your lowest power of a is a. And we've got b over here and a b squared over here. The lowest power of b is b. So 3ab is your highest common factor. So write your 3ab outside of your brackets. Inside of your bracket, you need to figure out what do I need to multiply 3ab to get 6a squared b. Firstly, with the numbers, you need to multiply 3 by 2 to get 6a squared b. Also, we need to multiply it by what? We've got an a here, and we've got an a squared here, so we need to multiply it by a to get an a squared. And b, we don't need to touch anything there because that b is the same as that b there. Okay, let's have a look at the second term here. Okay, what do we need to multiply this 3ab by to get 9ab squared up here? 3 times 3 will give us the 9 there, and then we want a, b, so a times what is equal to a. We don't need to write anything, but here we've got a b and here we've got a b squared, so we need to multiply that by b, and that is your factorization for that particular one. I think I've got time, so I better just do one more example because examples here are just critical. Let's just do like a negative yucky one. Negative 40x squared minus 15xy. Okay, let's try this one. Highest common factor. Look at the numbers. We've got, I'll just deal with the numbers first and then I'll look at the negatives. We've got 40 and 15. So the number that goes into both of those will be 5. There's nothing higher than that. But because they're both negative, what I'm going to do is take out negative 5 as a common factor, and that'll just sort of clean it up, and I'll show you why. They're both negative. Let's take the negative out the front of the bracket. Here we've got an x squared, here we've got an x, so let's take out x. And there's no y there, but there is a y there, so we can't take out y as a common factor. So that is our highest common factor. So negative 5x. What do we need to multiply negative 5x by to get negative 40x squared? Well, we need to multiply it by 8 to get our 40, and we also need to multiply by x to get our x squared. Here, what do we need to multiply negative 5x by to get negative 15x? Well, we need to multiply it by positive 3, because positive 3 times negative 5x will be negative 15x. And then also we're going to have a y there, because it's just sitting there by itself. We need to multiply that by. And so that is your answer. Just do a quick check of this. Let's just check that this is correct. Okay, it's just a check. Negative 5x times 8x. Negative 5 times 8 is negative 40. X times x is x squared. Negative 5x times positive 3y is negative 15xy, which is what you started with, so that's correct. Get used to these. It's a big part of maths and you need to be skilled. Thank you.